Are you like us? Tired of all the politically correct horseshit on podcasts and in the media? Need a podcast that's funny, smart, and gassy? It's not politically correct. It's just correct. This is the Carolina Underground. Throw that middle finger in the air. Raise them up. Because it's time to get loud, proud, and in your face. Generation X. Generation X. The best generation of all time meets the grit of the South. It's about everything and nothing at all. From current events to woolly boogers to movies to politics. Loud, brash, funny, and never, and I do mean never, predictable. The Carolina Underground with Mark and Mike.
Yo, 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 yo. It's the Carolina Underground, and we're back again on this pre-apocalyptic episode from the Replica Batcave and somewhere in the hidden depths of Sparkleberry.
Pre-apocalyptic. Wow.
Yeah. The eclipse is happening tomorrow.
Oh, are we supposed to have an apocalypse on the eclipse? I thought the apocalypse was because they're going to accept Ukraine into NATO, which immediately
means...
it's
going to happen tomorrow at the eclipse, but NATO ain't even going to get to come into the ball game.
Oh, okay. What's going? I have not heard about this. What? Oh, wait a minute.
Well,
I think
last year or 7 years ago,
we had an apocalypse. Shouldn't we do a
7 years
woo,
ago?
Woo, woo, woo.
7 years ago, evidently whenever the last total eclipse was, it passed through 7 cities named Nineveh.
Really?
It did, and this time it's passing through 7 cities named something else, and where they cross, it's passing through a city named Rapture.
Well, I'll be dogged.
So, one of two things is going to happen by tomorrow afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, or as you're listening to this afternoon. One, we all are going to be gathered, if you're a believer, at the wedding feast of the Lamb. Or, I'm going to be drinking a nice chilled glass of Paul Roger with my legs kicked up, wondering whether I'm going to have fried rice or pizza.
All righty. Well, okay. Again, but isn't that every day?
Well, yeah, it is true.
At the end of the day, to be perfectly honest with you, and I think I heard, Joe Rogan make the comment, that Jesus, if you're planning on coming back anytime soon, now would be a good time. And I have to agree with that.
An amazing time.
Well, again, that's one of those things. I was thinking the other day about, how many people are so anti-Christianity, and again, it's one of those things where if you take all of the religious trappings out, I'm talking about, the people being raised from the dead and or reincarnation or whatever it is that your particular variant believes.
Right.
The base of religion is, in my opinion, that there are things at work in this universe that we don't understand, that we can't comprehend, and we believe that there is a higher power at work.
Right. And true, though, we have to admit that what we considered the beginning and how things began with like the Hubble Space Telescope and that other one, the James Gardner.
Telescope, yeah.
Well, I keep wanting to call it James Gardner after the Rockford Files.
Well, we could have a telescope named after James Gardner. I think it would be pointed at where was the Rockford Files? That was in San Francisco, wasn't it?
I don't know, but I think it'd be pointed at somebody with big old double D's and a full sweater and an empty head.
Well, I don't have anything wrong with that either. But
Hey,
the point.
I just going to give you a forewarning.
But the
I'm on the triple goat peckered coffee,
okay.
and I'm running hot and true,
All right,
baby.
buddy. Well, but again,
And we're competing tonight with Wrestlemania.
oh my goodness, I am so sorry to hear that we're competing against. Well, I mean, so, but regardless, back to the rant that I was
My
in
wife
on.
is on zipper patrol at Wrestlemania.
Okay, I don't understand that, and I don't want to. We can talk about that later.
Well, it's an interesting story.
All right. Well, but I wanted to get done with my rant first, if that's okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a higher power at work. And I think that there's a lot of us that can agree with that. And if you can't agree with that,
Yeah.
then okay, fine. But but maybe you can agree with there's a lot of stuff going on that we don't understand. Okay, there, about the sun and the moon and all the twinkly stars in the sky. Okay, and again
Right.
the James Webb Telescope, we talked about this last week, is kind of turning our understanding of physics on its head, and whether or not the Big Bang theory is actually applicable. But at any rate, so somehow we got here. We don't know how. Okay, and I'm talking
I
about
know
the
how.
royal we, not us individually, as in the gestation of a fetus after a sperm meets an egg. I'm talking about somehow all of these plants, all of these animals, all of these planets, all of this stuff got here, and as human beings, we have a linear view of time, which tells us that there was a time when we weren't here. Okay.
Correct.
So with all that having been said, let's assume that there was a pre-order intelligence, just like Bucky Fuller came to believe, that upon looking at the fact that, according to our understanding of physics, nothing, okay, nothing, chaos is never organized without outside influence. Everything tends from high energy, high energy, high entropy, or excuse me, low energy, high entropy to high energy, low entropy. It all goes from organization to chaos without an external force. Therefore, by Bucky Fuller's reasoning, R. Buckminster Fuller, there must be a pre order intelligence at work in the universe. Okay, so, but at any rate, with that having been said, Christianity tells us a couple of things: be thankful, don't be mean to
Yes.
each other,
Yes.
treat everybody the way you want to be treated.
Right.
All right. What's
And I
wrong with
try
that?
to live like that.
No, and
I don't see anything wrong with that.
yeah,
And even if you take Christianity out of it,
that's what I'm saying.
why wouldn't you want to do that in the first place?
Right, exactly. If you don't want to treat other people the same way that you want to be treated, then
Then Charlie Foxtrot you.
absolutely, then I don't want you to be my friend. I don't want you to be around me. So, I guess the point being that if we all start acting like that, instead of getting hung up over whether you're a uh, whether you're straight or homosexual, or whether you're delusional and want people to share in your delusion. I mean, any rate, I'm sorry. I'm done with my rant. Let's go ahead. I'm starting to just get.
Well, see, I know how we got here.
All right, hit me.
I mean, it tells us.
Hmm.
Then God said,
Let there be light.
let us make man in our image
Hmm.
after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on earth. So God created man in his own image. In
Yep.
the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them.
Yep. And that again is absolutely right out of the book. But I was trying to go with, if for the folks that don't believe in the good book and the creation story. Now, I mean, again, we are created. There is no doubt that we are a
Well, I
creation.
mean, our bodies and the way we are made.
Mhm.
I have a hard time believing that we woke up as single cells and 7 million later we come out of a puddle of soup
No, I agree. Yeah.
like we are.
Well, and again, my point is the mechanics of how we were created is not important to me. But I mean, again, I was sitting there thinking about that whole thing about the climate change hoax. Okay, and they only go back 800,000 years, because if you
Well,
go
now
back.
wait a minute. Wait a minute.
What?
That senatorial candidate in New York has come out and said climate change is real because there was an earthquake in New York.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and that, yeah, okay. But again, the point being, if you only go back 800,000 years before when they start telling you that the Earth's getting warmer, because 800,000 years ago, before 800,000 years ago, the world was 6 degrees hotter than it is now. Okay. And according to these same people, there were no humans on the planet. So there wasn't anybody driving, their Dodge Raptor, or their, or whatever, out there and throwing hydrocarbons into the atmosphere. I mean, again, there's a lot of
Right.
wrong, a lot of things that went really bad, and we talked about that briefly as well, with the whole internal combustion thing, because the lead additives making people stupid and violent. Okay, so there's a lot of reasons that we could do things better than what we're doing, but we're not making the planet, we're not ruining the planet by having
Right.
electricity and modern, well, not specifically by the fact that we have modern conveniences. So becoming a Luddite and throwing everything into an electric car that's going to leave you stranded in the middle of a snowstorm or whatever. I mean, we can do better, but we don't have to destroy our way of life to do better. And the biggest thing
Right.
we need to do better is stop kowtowing to a bunch of people that only want to enrich themselves at our expense. And that would be the
And
people.
that's about everybody include that sits in both
Yep,
houses of the Congress and in the White
yep.
House.
And the and the 11 families around the world that own 99% of the resources, or claim that they own 99% of the resources. We allow them to
I don't own
subsist on
much,
that.
but I'll tell you, I got a couple bottles of Paul Roger and I'm
Well,
happy.
there you go. But again, that's the thing. We have this construct, and we believe the fear that is thrown down our throats, that if we change any jot and tittle of that construct, that everything's going to fall apart around us. And it's not true. I mean, we can make changes to the construct. We can make things better. And the first thing that we need to do to make these things better is get rid of the people that do not want everyone to prosper, or the people that want to destroy everything and take things that they do not deserve or that do not belong to them. The thieves and the rapists and the human traffickers and all of that crap.
Right.
But at any rate, so tell me about Zipper Patrol, because I'm gonna get on a soapbox and start preaching, and I think I've already
Well,
said enough for the evening.
Zipper Patrol, my wife, I love her.
Hmm.
But sometimes she had bad luck thinking. And she loves that pro wrestling.
Hmm.
She's loved it all her life.
All right.
It started out when we was just the size of little Cabbage Patch dolls,
Hmm.
working out in the tater field. And she loved that Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson, the Rock and Roll Express.
Hmm.
She loved them.
Hmm.
Loved them. And I'm probably going to get in trouble for telling this story, but it's just funny.
Hmm.
And Robert Gibson, bless his heart, they was all right wrestling, but when he was talking, hell, you couldn't tell who he was looking at. He had one eye went one way and the other one went the other, and you didn't know who he was talking to.
Hard to figure out which one to look at.
That's right. Well, I was a Horseman fan, and
Hmm.
anybody knows the Horseman. You got Arn, and I mean the original Arn, Ole, Tully, and
Hmm.
Ric Flair,
Hmm.
the real ones.
Right.
Barry Windham's okay, Lex Luger, but the original Horseman.
Hmm.
And so that's how we met, was because I pulled for wrestlers that was good, and she pulled for them crappy ones.
All right.
Well, there was a match in Greensboro,
Hmm.
and the Horseman was beating up on poor little Ricky Morton.
Mm-hmm.
And they scrubbed his face into concrete, and he was wearing a thing. Well, the Rock and Roll Express had to wrestle the Midnight Express.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody knew that Jim Cornette was the manager of the Midnight Express.
Mm-hmm.
And he carried with him a tennis racket.
All right.
Well, he hit Ricky Morton in the throat.
Mm.
And poor Ricky Morton couldn't talk on TV for a few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my wife, mind you, we're probably 12 years old, 13 years old at this time.
Mm-hmm.
We still kind of thinking this stuff's real. You know, you on the fence, you know, people kind of, oh, it's real.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, you still a kid and it looks real. And that was back when the bad guys didn't have sex with the good guys except behind closed doors
Mm-hmm.
and all that stuff. And so I guess at school, she had learned to write letters at this point.
Uh-huh.
So she started out writing the best, most professional business letter she could find.
Mm-hmm.
And this is right before 1986.
Mm-hmm. So you still
Thanksgiving night.
You still had to know how to spell, and you had to know
Right.
grammar. So you had to understand.
And you had to know how to lick a stamp to put on it and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
And I know this is happening right before Thanksgiving or right after Thanksgiving of 1986 because she writes Mr. Cornette a letter.
Mm-hmm.
And she ain't real happy of what he done to Ricky Morton.
Uh-huh.
So everybody knows on Thanksgiving night, Starrcade 86, at the wrestling match, Night of the Skywalkers, Jim Cornette fell from the scaffold, blew out both his knees, and was out of wrestling for a while because his knees was hurt and had to get them fixed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he had a chance to catch up on his fan mail.
All right.
Or lack thereof mail.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he gets this beautifully written letter from my beautiful young wife, and she's changed. She's not like this no more. But she pretty much told Jim Cornette whatever kind of scoundrel he was and that she was going to kill him.
Oh, my heavens.
It gets better.
Yikes.
It gets better.
Mm-hmm.
Not only did she put her return address on it, she put her phone number at the end of it in case he thought like he wanted to call and get frisky, and she would tell him off.
Oh, my heavens.
Well, she comes home from school.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Cornette has called and talked to her grandmother.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, she wasn't thinking about the letter.
Mm-hmm.
She was just excited because Jim Cornette called.
Right.
But it went downhill after that.
I would imagine so. And you said she was about 12 at the time?
About 12.
Oh,
yeah.
my goodness.
12,
Threatening
13,
somebody's
somewhere
life.
around in there.
Oh, boy. I can only imagine, having been a parent of a 12-year-old, how that conversation went. Oh, my goodness.
But needless to say, you know, she got grounded. But I told you that story to lead into the next story. She got all growed up. She didn't kill nobody. But Jim Cornette was worried about her. He thought she might need counseling. Hell, I think she might need counseling now. I don't know.
We could probably all stand some counseling from time to time. Good gracious. But go ahead.
But that's the backstory. Just
backstory.
needless to say, she is a lifelong pro wrestling fan.
Mm-hmm.
And this is Wrestlemania weekend.
I understand.
3 days worth of spectacular bullshit that don't mean nothing.
Right.
So we went, and I humored her, and I enjoy watching it from time to time. I don't follow it like as closely as she does or anything like that, or nowhere near as closely as I did when the Nature Boy was still wrestling. Because, I mean, let's just face it, since he quit, it ain't been worth a flip anyway.
Yeah, I'm with you.
But she taught me into going to a wrestling match when they was out here at the Coliseum.
Mm-hmm.
And we get tickets. We down on the floor. They can whack each other in the chest, and we get sweat and spit just fly all over our faces.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was going to be nice. I was taking pictures for her, so she would have pictures to commemorate the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And her favorite wrestler was there.
All right.
And he was standing in the corner right in front of us with his arm raised up in the air. And I took that picture because I knew she would like to have that for posterity.
All right.
And saying I was at that wrestling match.
Okay.
And I was all excited because I had it printed out and I gave it to her. Do you know the only thing she noticed in that picture was that wrestler's zipper was down? So my wife ain't watching it for the athletic sport of it. She's looking to see if they zippers is down.
All right. Well, somebody needs to do it. I
Now,
reckon.
she's probably going to give me a word when she hears that I have told that story, but it needs to be said.
Oh, well.
Sometimes all you got to do if you want to excite them, you ain't got to do no showing. Just put the zipper down.
All righty. Well, that is a lot more
joke for
information
you.
than I wanted to know. Go ahead. Hit me.
How many Democrats does it take to solve a problem?
Good heavens. I have no idea.
Well, guess what? Don't nobody know because it ain't never happened.
I will be absolutely right on there with you on that one.
I read an interesting article, I think Friday evening.
Mhm.
There is a chance, due to quirk of the scheduling of the Democrat convention and new Ohio law,
Mhm.
that Joe Biden will not be on the ballot in Ohio.
Oh, my heavens.
Because evidently the way it falls is it has to be certified and done before they're having the Democratic convention, and he'll even be nominated.
Well, that would be poetic. As much effort as they put in to try to
it'd be
take
kind of fun. They'd find a way to cheat and get it to win because they some cheating rascals. Well, it's just been a busy weekend.
Yeah.
We had the NCAA tournament. Your congratulations. The Gamecocks, I think, won one of the titles.
Well, I would really appreciate that if I gave a rip about basketball or any other professional sport.
I mean, we all know if it's that one pretty school with the blue and the orange in the SEC and not, I mean, who wants to be called a cock?
I have no idea.
That's the dumbest thing I ever heard of in my life.
Well, I mean, again, now the thing about it is, back when they used to fight birds, when it was okay to fight birds and it was okay to have dog fights and all of that stuff. I mean, and again, that was a pretty brutal time. I mean, I put that in the same category as bullfighting, honestly. But if you ever watched a couple of roosters scrap it out, they're vicious. There is no doubt about it. And back in the day when we actually
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think watching two cocks fight around is on the top of my list.
No, I would agree with that. But again, I had to have that conversation with my girlfriend just the other day because she was wearing a shirt with her school mascot on it. And she said, I don't like this school mascot because he's angry. I said, he's supposed to be angry. Your mascot is supposed to be vicious and supposed to strike fear into the heart of your opponents because they're tangling with a jaguar or they're tangling with a tiger.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Albert is not vicious.
Well, he's
lovable.
Well, I mean, again, but they softened him up, but they're supposed to be. I mean, again, look at the Seminoles. It's supposed to be a Seminole war chief. Seminoles are the only Indian nation in the entire United States that were never conquered. They are an unconquered separate nation still.
Well, that's because we didn't find the right color beads they wanted.
Well, because they was in the swamp.
Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't have a problem with the Seminole Nation or the Seminole Indians. However, them rascals up in Tallahassee that call themselves the Seminoles, I ain't got no use for them at all.
Well, I know I don't have any use for them either. I've always referred to them as, that's welcome to FSU, where the women are women and the men are too.
Well, everybody says, "Oh, you went to Florida State." No, I didn't go to Florida State.
I have more respect for
Kind of like when
myself.
Bobby Bowden was the coach, that there for a while when Florida was so good and FSU sucked, they had a problem with all their players were getting arrested and stuff, and they finally solved the problem up at Florida State when they recruit them and get them signed in on the first day of practice. They give each one of the kids their own 7-Eleven, and that way they can rob it anytime they want to.
All right. Okie dokie.
Hey, I'm telling you, that triple goat pecker coffee, it does wonders.
Yeah, I imagine so. I imagine so. We need to talk about something worthwhile instead of rather riling people. Well, if we're going to rile people up, we might as well rile them up good. But
well, it's like the rapper at the end says, we hope we entertained you and we hope you enjoyed it. But if we didn't, at least we hope we pissed you off because we really don't care.
Yeah, there you go. Well, again, that makes me, when you talk about rappers, I cannot help but think of that whole Insane Clown Posse thing where they were arresting their fans, and their fans were getting fired because the FBI decided that they were a gang. And and I mean, again, if you look at the history of rap, most of them have gang related members, but not this bunch. And I mean, it's I don't know. Again, it's crazy. It's all
well,
crazy.
and I saw something interesting the other day. We'll go to a serious topic now. Kind of, I'll throw you a lifeline.
Now I need one. I kind of feel like I need one.
About what the Mexican president said about his demands for curtailing the onslaught at our southern border, about $20 billion and all these promises and all this other stuff. And that he made to Joe Biden. Joe Biden will probably do. I mean, hell,
well, Joe Biden is all about
sniff and snort. You don't never know what those two are going to do. Well, but I'm going to be honest with you. The Mexican president needs to watch it. And I'm going to tell you why.
All right.
We about whooped his entire country's ass with 3 toothless rednecks at the Alamo.
Yep.
He may want to shut up.
Yeah. Well, the thing of the matter is, the United States used to be a respectable place, and that is one of the things that just breaks my heart. Well, more respectable. At least we thought we were. I mean, again, I watched the movie Fury the other night about the tank crew with The Greatest Generation.
Mm-hmm.
And they were men. They didn't particularly want to do what they were doing. And I mean, again, if you haven't seen that movie, it's a good movie. It really is.
I don't think I've seen it.
Well, I recommend you watch it because the whole thing is following a tank crew in World War II, and after the Normandy invasion and the Battle of the Bulge. And I think it was after.
Were they in Patton's Third Army?
They were not in the Third Army, I don't think. But again, the situation was that the German tanks were far technologically were far superior technologically to the American tanks.
Well, the German tanks could stop at a petrol station and fill up.
Well, that too.
It wasn't like the tanks of World War I.
Right. And so the end result was that, I believe, if I remember correctly, we lost 5 Shermans to every Tiger, or every one German tank that was taken out.
Right.
And so,
well, you know what? I read one time what they called our tanks.
The Shermans, yeah.
They called them Purple Heart boxes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the bullets would pierce the armor on one side and just bounce around for a little while.
Oh yeah. So I mean, again, the men that were manning those tanks and were going into harm's way, they knew that their odds of surviving were pretty thin, but they did it anyway because they were.
Well, it was either that or the known world was going to cease to exist.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, it's astounding what the German war machine was able to do. And I mean, it's the study of the study of the history of World War II is absolutely fascinating because I mean, again, the Nazis took a beleaguered and defeated nation and in a
Yep.
very short period of time turned them into a technological, the words escape me. They were so their technology was
Well, they became a
they
juggernaut
were
essentially,
absolutely a juggernaut. He reinvented
and
warfare, very similar to
I
what
think
Genghis
part of
Khan
it,
did with the stirrup. But
well,
go ahead.
with the whole Khan
Yeah.
dynasty, but I think uh, essentially what Hitler was able to do was he was able to capture the lightning in a bottle, so to
Oh,
speak,
absolutely. Yeah.
and play off the feelings because all the pretty much all the Germans felt like they had been abused after World War One.
Well, they were.
That they were never going to be able to keep paying reparations. It
Mhm.
wasn't going to happen, and all that. And Hitler was able, in the most basic form, not saying that he was right because he was a lunatic,
Mm.
but he was able to project a sense of strength, and he was able to give the German people hope that there was going to be light at the end of the tunnel.
Well, and
There
there's
was going to be a chicken in every pot and a car in every driveway because of Volkswagen and all that stuff.
Well, but again, it was very, I mean, if you look at the Bolshevik Revolution that occurred in Russia, and you look at the Nazis in Germany, and you look at the brown shirts and Mussolini in Italy, they weren't overwhelmingly popular with the constituency. They only represented about 10%. And that's the scary thing about revolutions is it's usually 10% or less of the population that create.
Right, because the rest of the population is so apathetic that they're just going to go whichever way the wind
Right.
blows.
And again, one of the things, and I believe I brought it up before on more than one occasion, there was a set of interviews done with Holocaust survivors, and they asked them many questions, but the one that stuck in my mind was when they asked them, "How did you let this happen? You were citizens of Germany," and every one of them answered the same thing. Things, they would have one crazy thing after another, but it was just, there'd been crazy things said before, and we figured it would just blow over. The next thing you know, we're
Kind
being
of
hurt. We're
very
wearing a star on our shoulder and being herded
right,
into cattle cars. So
kind of very reminiscent of what's going on today.
exactly. And so when crazy things are said, you have to pay attention. You don't want to, but when Ocasio-Cortez calls for people who don't take
Oh,
the mRNA stab to be placed in concentration camps, you have to listen because that
exactly.
kind of insanity gains its own momentum.
It does.
It's
You're
it's the
correct.
same kind of mob mentality. You've seen it. I know you've seen it. I've seen it. I mean, hell, we had a whole summer of it in 2019 and 2020 with but mob mentality tends to spin out of control, and then you have people who are reveling over their team winning a sporting contest, destroying the town that they live in as a result.
Right.
So,
I saw
yeah.
a meme the other day,
Hmm.
and it had a picture of Adolf Hitler,
Hmm.
a picture of Joseph
Hmm.
Stalin, a picture of Chairman Mao,
Hmm.
and a picture of Joe Biden.
Yep, I saw that meme myself, and it's very
And matter
accurate.
of fact, it may have been you that sent it to me,
Might have been.
but it's leaders who have a ministry of truth,
Hmm.
their political opponents arrested,
Hmm.
and believe that children belong to the state.
Yep, absolutely. I may have sent that to you. I know I
I think
shared
you
it.
did send that to me, but it just kind of,
It puts
yeah,
things
and
in perspective.
I think, but one of the things the show The Newsroom,
Mhm.
that opening scene that is so viral on YouTube and everywhere, where he pretty much says America is not the greatest country in the world anymore.
Mhm.
That is pretty resonant with me, and it kind of sticks in my mind because I remember a time when we were
Mhm.
we really sought to make the world a better place. And it's been in our lifetime since that has fell
Oh
off.
yeah.
And it's because we have allowed others
Mhm.
who have no business being in the government or being in the nation's business in the nation's
Oh,
business.
absolutely. I mean,
Like Secretary Blinken, for example, talking about in the middle of a war with Russia
mhm.
that NATO is going to allow Ukraine to become a member.
Right. Well,
That is probably one of the most unresponsible statements that a government personnel or government representative could have made.
right. And again, NATO was developed to prevent war in
With the
Europe
Soviet
with
Union.
the Soviet Union. And
And the
again,
last time I checked, the Soviet Union no longer
that is
exists.
correct. And again, Ukraine was one of the Warsaw Pact nations,
Hmm.
and
Because it was
it
part
was
of
part of
Russia.
the Soviet Union. And that was, again, the whole thing, the whole reason for Putin invading the Donbass region was he said completely, I mean, the Crimean Strait, which is part of the Donbass region, and the Donbass region has historically considered itself to be a part of Russia.
Uh huh.
That's the only open water port that they have, okay, is through the Straits of Crimea into the Mediterranean Sea. And when they first started talking about putting Ukraine into NATO, he said, if you do that, then we will take the Donbass region back. And we continued to go forward with that. And he did that and then stopped. And all of the aggression and all of the war against Russia has been coming from the U.S. Ukraine side since that point. Okay. And for some reason, people still can't understand that. There is no
Well, they still
way.
can't understand that Israel has to stomp out
Right,
Hamas.
absolutely. And and of course, there's supposed to be some repercussions from Iran on that front as well.
Right.
But again,
And of course, you have Joe Biden calling for the destabilization of a duly elected government.
absolutely, yeah.
So, I mean, the daughter and old fool and his team need to shut up.
Well, but that same team, they don't care if we wind up in World War III.
Well, because all of them are too damn old and shitting so much in their pants that
Yeah.
they ain't gonna have to go on the front
Well,
lines
their people,
and pick a gun and stand the wall.
right, and their children will not be expected to go and lay down their lives either.
Well, they're not gonna have to because Snort. I
Yeah,
mean, there's way too much stuff. He ain't gonna be able to get his daily dose of cocaine or heroin over there.
right. Well, but again, here's the thing, if you look
He'll
back,
probably pick up another bag of money.
right, if you go back in history and look at the rulers of England, for example, William the Conqueror, Richard the Lionhearted, and all of those Longshanks, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They used to actually go out there on the
They
front
were on the front
lines,
line. Yeah.
and so they were revered by their people to some degree because they were the ones at the front of the charge. Well, maybe not necessarily at the front, but they
But
were
they were
involved.
there.
They were sitting there, with the slings and arrows, and there was a potential that they could wind up, you know, pushing up daisies along with the rest of their men. And so they tended and somewhere along the way, we got to this point where we have our leadership who's calling the shots and who's deciding who lives and dies. sequestered away from the fighting,
Right.
and that's part of where things went wrong. But about 40 years ago, was it 40 years ago or is it more than 40 years ago now? Well, was Eisenhower left in the 60s, so that's more than 40 years ago. Okay, that's 60
Eisenhower
years
left
ago.
in 1959
Yeah, so that's 60 years ago now.
or 60.
Now,
Yeah, because Kennedy took in January of 61.
right, and I really think that that's where everything went sideways. Was after Eisenhower left, because Eisenhower's parting words were, beware the military-industrial complex and the power which they exert, right?
Hmm.
Or pretty
Well,
close to that. That's paraphrase.
Kennedy for to his credit, I think he at one time at the beginning until he got lied to by the CIA
Hmm.
was kind of going along with it. But I think once Allen Dulles and them had lied to him, he had realized, and he was going to splinter it.
Oh
And
yeah,
there was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There would have been no Vietnam because Kennedy was set to pull everybody out
right,
by the December of 1963.
right, exactly. And that was where the military-industrial complex said no, and the CIA said no. And I mean,
Well,
again, and that was one of the things that I referred to about some of the time that I've spent in Latin America and their viewpoint of a lot of the stuff that we had a very different perspective of, because during some of that time I was in the military, and we had a totally different perspective. But the CIA was lying to us then too, and so,
well, yeah, and what one of the biggest lies was the Gulf of
oh
Tonkin
yeah.
incident. Our boys are floating in the water dead,
Hmm.
and it never happened.
Right. Yeah. And so, here you've got I mean, think about that for a minute. Prior to World War One, there really wasn't a gigantic military machine in the United States. The intent was that the militias were there for any kind of skirmish or anything that needed to happen. Okay. Um, and there was a military, but it wasn't this huge, overwhelming thing that takes, you know, trillions of dollars to fund like what we've got now. But it was enough of a force to be able to withstand an attack from any
Uh-huh.
nation that would come forth, theoretically. And that was all you maintained. It wasn't about it. The arms race really happened in the 60s and 70s. It was post World War
Right.
II. And it was this whole, stop the threat of
Pissing
communism.
contest to see
Yeah,
whose tallywhacker was
right.
bigger.
The whole stop of communism. And, again, I understand. And the what I grew up believing, and the reason I joined the military was that I believed in the United States. And I think
Hmm.
for a large portion of my life, the United States was really attempting for the most part. But I mean, okay, so I watched the movie Emperor. It's on Amazon Prime. You can watch it on Freevee.
You're talking about when
McCarthy.
MacArthur was accepting
Yep.
the surrender of
Of
the
Pura Vida.
emperor at the end on the Missouri.
Yep. Well, no, yeah. Well, it was after that. It was when he actually sat down and met with. Well, no, it might have been before that. I don't know. I'm not 100% certain on the chronology of that point.
Great movie though,
Yeah,
with Tommy Lee
Tommy
Jones.
Lee Jones. And there was a
Yeah, good
point
movie.
where I believe it was the Prime Minister of Japan was talking to Fellers, who was doing the investigation. And he made the comment about, we didn't take, um, we took Malaysia from the British. We
Uh-huh.
took Laos or whatever. At any rate, they took that from the French, and they did. So the European nations, and when they took the Philippines from the United States. Well, those were all Asian countries. as
Right.
was Taiwan. Okay. And so, again, we were never taught that the United States was colonizing just like the British and the French and the other European nations were,
Well, I mean,
but we weren't.
theoretically, we were the majority were colonists when they came over here.
Right. Yes, we were. And again, we, we took the New World, North America, Latin America, and South America away from the natives who lived here. Now, granted, a large part of that was the fact that the initial explorers brought syphilis and
Smallpox.
smallpox, and the indigenous tribes had never been had exposed to that. But again, that was a different time, and there's nothing that says we can't be better than we were. But again,
Right.
we were supposedly spreading versions of our representative republic into those places and
Uh-huh.
supposedly allowing self-governance. Now, I've since learned that we kind of didn't necessarily, and then of course, Panama, Nicaragua, Venezuela,
Iraq,
Iraq, yeah, those places.
Iran.
We did. Yeah, Iran was another one. We really didn't put representative republic,
Government in.
government in.
Right.
We basically just brokered some backroom deals that made the people that were, involved fabulously wealthy.
Right.
So again, back to the love of money is the root of all evil. So there's nothing.
Well, we made it through April Fool's Day.
Yeah, but it was tough on April Fool's Day to figure out who was actually making a joke and who was spouting real news, which is sad.
Here's what I saw.
Mhm.
The two things that I think set the internet on fire
Mhm.
that won the April Fool's things were the two movie posters. One of the Goonies' second movie, The Curse of One-Eyed Willie,
Mhm.
and the other one is The Return to Earth, ET 2025.
Hmm. Okay.
I have seen more comments about those two movies, and of course, neither one of them are real.
Right.
They're both April Fool's jokes, but that's that's what we need. We need to go back to where we make good movies so people are entertained, so they'll quit watching the news and actually pay attention to for themselves as to
Well,
what's going
we
on.
need to go back to a world where there's not a 24-hour news cycle of the media telling you what to think about the facts instead of telling you what the facts are and letting you make up your own mind. That's one of the things that
Right.
we need to do. And we need to go back to a United States where we realize the sovereignty of every individual state and that the federal government is not supposed to be some overarching um,
Overseer,
overseer where the president can, with the
like the
stroke of a
master on the
pen,
plantation.
yeah, where the master or where the president with the stroke of a pen can change border policy. I mean, we should have our military on the nation's border because that's
Hey,
what they're
I
supposed to
told
be
you
there for.
last week, you put them down there with live ammunition, you roll a couple of them coming across illegally, the rest of them will stop and think about before the rest of them
Well,
do it.
but that's the whole thing. Again, what their goal is to declare they've made a change to the census so that the number of representatives is not based on the population of citizens, but based on the total population. And they're gonna give the with especially with the mail-in ballot thing where no signature verification or voter ID is required, they're going to use that to basically gerrymander the election so that they
Well,
stay
here's
in
what's going to end
power.
up happening. They're going to gerrymander, they're going to cheat.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
fine. What's going to end up happening is the people that are working every day
Mhm.
and actually paying the money into the government to keep it running are finally going to look up and say, you know what? Why am I doing this? If I quit work, they're going to give me everything I want anyway. And then there's all going to implode.
Well, that's the whole story. Every time that anyone has done the whole experiment in a classroom where it's like we're just going to give everybody a C, regardless of
Uh-huh.
whether you do well, regardless of whether you do poorly. They'll have it always comes out the same way. The first test, everybody that worked hard and actually passed the test is mad. And then the next test, like a huge percentage of them fall off. And by the end of the year, nobody's actually putting in any effort because they know they're going to
Right.
get a fit, they're going to get the same stipend no matter whether they put in. Yeah,
Regardless of what happens.
exactly. Now, we don't have that right now. Having just gone through unemployment, okay, I can tell you for an absolute fact, they're not taking care of the citizenry. They're only taking care of the
Of the
illegals,
illegals
okay,
and the drug
and the
addicts.
drug addicts, okay, because that suits their purposes right now. Because those people will
They're
do
those
what they're
people
told.
that don't think for
Yeah,
themselves, that will blindly vote for whoever you tell them to.
absolutely, and that's what they're after. Now, this is not going to end well for the United States. It's not going to end well for the world if we allow this to happen.
I
It's a
agree.
sad thing. But again, at the same time, I don't know what we're going to do until everybody is willing to stand up. I mean, personally, I think we ought to stand up to our own state legislatures and go, you know what? We need to be handling our own stuff and cut off the teat from this state to Washington, period. Okay. And
Well, I will say this: the legislature in this state
mhm,
have actually, I think, been doing a good job.
recently they have. You guys had a couple of
Right.
spotty years. I'm not 100% certain about my state right now because again, we've still got a segment of that legislature that is supporting Joe Biden.
Right.
And that, I'm sorry, but I think they got to go. But that's just me.
And on that note, boys and girls, if you're going to watch it, if it's not The Rapture, get the glasses. Don't go blind.
Well, you're supposed to be able, you take a shoe box, and you put a pinhole in it and a piece of paper.
They don't teach that in
Oh,
school
they don't
anymore.
teach nothing at
They
school
don't do
anymore.
that anymore. That would mean the students would have to pay attention and be in class.
Well, that's true. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to enter. You were trying to sign off, and here I have to go and
Well,
question.
I don't want them to go. Well, actually, look at the damn eclipse. Go blind. That way you can listen to us and we'll tell you what's going on in there. And that's the snout to the curly tail, the three-peckered billy goats, and the time for Paul Roger, baby. And we gone.
All right, you crazy bunch of motherfuckers. Wait, can we say mother? Anyway, you've been listening to the Carolina Underground. It isn't politically correct, it's just correct. Our motto is, if you can't go balls deep, don't go at all. Actually, that's not our motto, and I'm sorry, I don't even know what that meant. All right, we gotta go. We hope you enjoyed the show. And if you didn't, we hope it really pissed you off. Follow us on Twitter at Carolina UNDGRND. Underground, get it? Or drop us an email at Carolina UNDGRND. Get it? At northstate.net. We want to hear from you. Y'all be cool. See you next time on Carolina Underground.